Smiley Day Geeks, welcome back to the Geek Sider Show. I'm Josh.
I'm Anna.
And in this video, we're talking about Critical Role, Campaign 3, Episode 30. If you haven't seen it yet, you want to avoid any spoilers, skip this video and come back later, because everything we say from this point forward is going to be a spoiler. So this episode started off with an encounter, and I love the whole the bridge and how that whole thing.
Oh yeah, that was really cool.
It has rail like guardrails, but they've been blasted open where people got reckless and crashed over the side. But the combat, really kind of an obvious combat to push the encounter with the Nightmare King and the reuniting of Fern with her father to the second half of the episode. So it was kind of a filler combat to push other stuff to later.
Yeah.
Storytelling and pacing wise, that's great. But in a home game, I don't think I would do that. And we talked about that earlier.
Yeah, probably not. Like, that was absolutely something that was done for deliberately because this is a streamed game.
Yeah.
If they were playing at home, I don't think they would have done that because the timing on stopping an episode doesn't have to be quite so climactic as it does when you're streaming. So, like, you can just stop wherever, it's fine. And if you want to keep playing and you play really, really long, it's okay as long as everybody's available.
Yeah.
And actually, because of that, at the beginning of the combat, I actually had a hard time paying attention to it. But Matt designs the best combats.
He really does.
He does such a good job, because although I was upset because I was like, well, I guess all I'm going to get to see is the combat because I have to go to bed and then I'll have to wait for all the good stuff afterwards. It wasn't even it wasn't even like 5 or 10 minutes into the combat when I was like, okay, yeah, I changed my mind. This is a really, really dope ass combat. They all do these little things to flavor their spells or just make interesting choices. And that's actually what made this combat for me was Imogen.
It was Imogen's.
Yeah, Imogen's choice to lightning bolt through a gun with 200 some rounds in it.
And it had 240 rounds, but only 60 of them were like prepped or whatever.
Yeah.
And
so I think Matt did that because otherwise he would have TPK'd.
Yeah, and so basically, like erratically firing. So Matt rolled disadvantage 5 times at each player character and enemy that was within the range of this gun. And what was great, it wasn't like, just all the, because I think everybody got hit. A couple of enemies went down.
Yeah, everybody that he rolled against got hit at least once. But the enemies got hit multiple times. Like, I think Ashton only got hit once out of all 5. He only got hit once. And
I think only maybe one got hit more than once.
Yeah.
Because the disadvantage. But my favorite part of that, it wasn't, like all the dice rolling and just how silly the situation was. It was, Matt goes, so that's your action. What else do you want to do? Because like that whole thing took like 7 minutes to resolve that action. He's like, so that's your action. What else you got going on?
I also really, really like how Matt remembered that guns can't be fired like that and rolled a Constitution save for the gun to find out if it would explode. And that was really good, because I was like, technically, he really didn't have to do that.
And you know, I think he might have been thinking in that moment, okay, if they take this thing, I don't want them to have this gun.
Yeah.
Like, as a DM, okay, so this whole encounter, I'm like, they're going to try and steal this fucking crawler.
Oh, yeah.
And as a DM, I'm like, don't let them have the crawler. You're going to fucking regret it. As a player, I'm like, try to get the crawler. And then, of course, Laudna cast Darkness, and the thing just went over the cliff.
Yeah.
And so, Matt managed to keep
Get
them
rid of the crawler.
from apprehending this crawler, which, as a DM, smart move, because you would definitely regret it. It would just be mayhem after that. As a player, I'm like, oh, kind of wish I got it.
It would only be mayhem while they were in the city, because there's no fucking way that crawler was fitting on the airship.
Oh yeah,
Their bike.
Well, they could take it back to could they just drive it all the way
in
back?
Maharajas. They can Well, yeah, I guess if they wanted to just send the ship back on its own and drive that instead, but then they'd have to deal with all the crawler gangs from...
Yeah, trying to take it back.
Uh-huh.
Especially the Ruiners, because they're not going to let that slide.
No.
I am curious as to what the response from the Ruiners is going to be. Not that any of them know who was responsible for the destruction of that crawler, but...
there'll definitely be some sort of investigation.
Somebody did see them, though,
yes,
so they can
there
make
is
a
somebody who
description.
knows who it is. Yeah,
they can at least give a description.
The car that passed them on the bridge and sent up the flare to signal.
So there's at least somebody out there who can give a description of who they are. Maybe not names and everything, but like what they're.
And they're not exactly a nondescript group.
No, they are a very eclectic.
I mean,
looking
even
group.
losing Blue Boy, they're still a pretty eclectic group.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, I really enjoyed that combat. Combat, I mean, it's not my favorite part of D&D, but I do pretty much enjoy it, and I really enjoy Matt's combat. And this combat, I think, was my favorite combat of this campaign so far, because I love the terrain, the rocks. That looked like that's not something that I've seen on Etsy, those specific rock formations. I think that's something that somebody made that Matt had commissioned. They just looked beautiful. I love the terrain like that, like the handmade terrain. I do a little bit of it myself, not especially well, but I think it's really fun. I love watching other people do it, and I love seeing what other people are capable of, and that terrain really blew me away, especially the rocks.
I like the crawlers and the bikes that they're...
That crawler was dope as shit.
Like the minis for those are just so good. They're so Mad Max vibes. I love them so much.
They're fantasy Mad Max. Like it's like they don't have like tires, like rubber tires. They have legs.
Have, like, legs. Yeah.
And oh man, and
I love it.
I really thought they might take it. Like as a DM, I'm glad they did. And I'm like, whew. As a player, I'm bummed.
Yeah, I love it.
Second half of this episode is where it just kind of popped off a little bit. Like, holy shit. There was a shitload of reveals and some lore, and
it wasn't a lore heavy.
No, but there was some lore.
There was a little bit of lore, and thankfully, because last episode was a fuck ton of lore. This was more just weird shit and trying to work out what they already knew with a little bit of extra lore sprinkled in.
First of all, we got to talk about Fern and Birdie and
Ollie.
I want to call him Collie and Ollie. There's just something weird there. Like we were talking about it earlier, like every time they talk about it and how long they've been apart, it seems like the number changes.
Yeah, it's really bizarre, but it's like they can't remember. There has been some memory fuckery done on all of them, or like you suggested, they're not actually Birdie or
I'm wondering
Fern's
if they're
parents.
really Birdie and Ollie.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if maybe they're shapeshifters in place of Birdie and Ollie. Has anybody rolled an insight check on either of them?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Just somebody has to have. But
I think so.
But there's just something off about it, and I don't know if it's that the the difference in the amount in the time that's passed or whatever. That could be something that's because of some memory magic, or it could just be the players getting forgetting the years or whatever. Because that happens when you play any D&D, but especially when you play like as prolifically as Critical Role does, and you have as much lore as Matt does, and so much going on. You're gonna get stuff wrong. It's unavoidable.
It's hard to keep all that shit straight.
But I don't know. Something's really off there. And then Fern asked like a question that never occurred to me to ask. I wouldn't have asked it as a player. It wouldn't have occurred to me. But she asked, did you trade me to Maury?
Was I something you gave or
was something
like
that you traded?
Yeah.
And it never would have occurred to me as a player to ask it.
That kind of broke me a little bit. I was like, oh,
she sounded
Fern.
utterly brokenhearted because she already knew. She's like, that happened.
Yeah. Yeah, she had figured it out. Like, Fern was very quiet and thoughtful during this whole thing, which is not very Fern.
Mm-hmm.
So that right there is a punch in the gut. And then when she asked that question, she knew what answer she was going to get because she was already sad and downtrodden before they even answered. She was like, I know they're, and I like we said, we don't know what the fuck's going on with the parents. I think it's a memory thing because it's there seems to be some memory and time fuckery going on with Fern, so it would make sense to be going on with Birdie and Ollie as well. Ollie though was then very confused, like didn't seem blown away. Like he did say, "Oh, you've grown up," but like didn't put it together that it was too grown up until somebody mentioned it and then was like, oh yeah, you don't really look like you're 14. So like there's a lot of things that just aren't working out and just seem very weird, but it's the people don't realize they're weird until somebody specifically asks them about it.
Might have something to do with Maury. We find out Maury, and I said I think she's a hag. Yeah, she's a crone. She's a hag.
Yep, she's a hag.
And you mentioned something interesting. I think it was while we were watching, or right after we were watching. Did did Ira, the Nightmare King, did he trick them into trading?
I do remember there being some sort of comment about. I think it was Birdie. It was either Birdie or Ollie who said something about like. Ira didn't mention that or something like that when they were talking about it. So I was like, well, fuck, did Ira say, I need this piece and Maury is who can get it, but I need to make a deal on your behalf. Can I do that? And if they said yes, then technically, that gave him permission to make a deal.
But then Fae contracts are funny. You have to be super specific, and that can work both ways. So if Ira technically didn't have permission to trade Fern, does that void the contract?
Or because he technically didn't have permission, is that why Maury fucked with time so she could have Fern for longer? That literally just came to me right now. I was like, holy fuck, what if that's why she fucked with time?
So much going around on this one thing that like I could literally think about it all day and get no closer to what I think is going on.
Yeah.
I have no idea. We gotta do Imogen stuff.
Yeah.
With the telescope. When Lana looked through the telescope before the new lens was in there, she got the headache, dizzy, because Marisha rolled for shit. It's a really cool way to cover that. Instead of saying, "Oh well, you're not paying attention, you don't see anything." There's a reason behind it.
You know what? It really reminded me of Brennan. Spoilers for Calamity for like 30 seconds. When Brennan did the invisible thing where you could see the irises, it reminded me of that a little bit. Like there was a legit reason why. Looking through a telescope, she couldn't see anything very clearly. It's looking through the telescope, you kind of get a little bit of vertigo. Yeah.
And there's something about that telescope.
Yeah, and something about the telescope.
With the magic of that telescope that kind of...
with your brain, yeah.
But then Imogen, after the lens goes in, she gets to look through it. And she didn't roll good either. Didn't roll great, so she had Orem look through it. Yeah. And then when I think he got a natural 20 after...
Orem got a natural 20.
Because I think he rolled a 1 and then re-rolled it because he's a halfling.
No, he has advantage because he made sure to say he was holding his shield when he looked through. That's it. For the very first time, he's never done this before, described what the shield feels like when it gives him advantage on the perception check.
Gotcha. That's right. Yeah. That's right. So Orem rolled really well, and then when like the telescope moved over what she needed to see, she grabbed her head and jammed it into the telescope.
Look.
And there's a fucking city in the storm. Yeah.
And the moon's a fucking prison.
It's a prison for a god, and there's a city in the storm.
Yeah.
So
it's a prison it's a prison. We don't know for sure it's for a god, but it's definitely a prison. There's a city there, and there's 2 forgotten gods.
What else could a moon be a prison for? A titan, maybe?
I don't know. Well, the city. It's very likely there's at least one of the 2 forgotten gods are there.
Ashley seemed to have an idea of what it was, and she didn't want to say on stream. I think because she if she's right, she doesn't want to potentially spoil it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great pair of episodes back to back. Oh my gosh. I cannot wait to find out more about this city because that's where the episode ends.
Yeah.
So there's got to be something significant about it. and Ashley thinks she knows what it is, I am fucking dying to know.
Yeah.
So we will see you next week with our discussion of the next video. Coming soon is Anna's Tal'Doria Reborn campaign. That's just a few weeks away. We're going to get that started. We're going to run our session 0 this weekend.
Yeah.
But that's not going to be going on YouTube.
No, session 0 that's our discussion of boundaries and triggers and stuff like that. That's not something we're going to post on YouTube, but it is something that's really important to have with your DM. Yeah. Make sure everybody's on the same page with things and such.
So anyways, stay tuned for that campaign. I'm really excited for it. Can't wait to play my rogue.
My second time DMing y'all, so be gentle.
I think that's going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please let us know by dropping a like on it and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.
And thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.